All right. Well, thank you all for joining me here today. So we're going to talk about a lot of things, including a lot of the unrest that happened over this past year after the killing of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. And I'm also going to kind of take us back to think about the 2001 unrest. It is okay if you don't know a lot about that. I'm going to give us all a little rundown on that. And I guess I just want to get started. If you all want to introduce yourselves, we can go this way. And then just tell us your first and last name, how old you are, and if you're in school, what school you go to.
Hi, I'm Amir. I'm a senior at SCPA, and I'm a drama major.
Hi, my name is Aubrey Jones. I'm 17 years old. I also go to the School for Creative and Performing Arts, and I'm a drama major as well.
Hi, my name is Chicka Chicka Slim Shade. No, stop. I had to. I'm sorry. My name is Noah Hawes. I work here at Elementz. I'm one of our teaching artists. And currently not in school, but I went to Withrow for high school. And yeah, I'm just all around a nice dude, I guess, you know.
Hello, I'm LeBeau. I'm 34 years old. An alumni here at Elementz. I'm an MC in the music. I'm a community activist, and I'm a mentor. Nice to meet you all.
Word up.
And I'm Jolene Almendarez. I realized I didn't introduce myself. I work at Cincinnati Public Radio, and I'm a reporter there.
Oh, see, now I got to go back. Look, my name Noah Halls here at Elementz, and I'm a teaching artist. I'm also an MC. I'm a music producer and an audio engineer and a visual artist and a podcast host. And my resume is long. No,
You definitely have me beat, I promise.
no, I'm just kidding. No.
All right, so I guess I'll get started. It's a pretty heavy conversation, so I'll just get started. It's been a year. We just passed the year mark since Breonna Taylor was killed during a no-knock warrant execution at her home. And I think in May, we're going to be a year since George Floyd was killed. And that was really the kickoff for a lot of things that happened in this past year, and a lot of the protests and demonstrations that happened last year also. So does anyone want to get started by sort of looking back and reflecting over what happened last summer, what the feeling was on the ground, and sort of how the past few months of the pandemic has impacted some of that movement that was created last year?
I can go first. So unfortunately, I was not really aware of Breonna Taylor until like kind of afterwards. But when George Floyd was murdered, I definitely was aware of that. I don't think that missed anybody's radar. Protests everywhere, every city, like everywhere. My neighborhood, Avondale, there were and that kind of surprised me because Avondale always felt like a place that wasn't really united. It's kind of just one of those places where whatever happens, happens. But it was good to see people come together to protest like that. And I don't think too much. I don't think there was any damage, at least a lot of damage, I should say, as in regards to property and things like that. But that was crazy. The curfew ended up happening here in Cincinnati. So that affected everyone's lives. There was a point where we had to be out of this building by a certain time, and if you got caught outside after the curfew had already started, then you got arrested. Some of my friends, members here at Elementz, got arrested because they were out protesting after the curfew. And so that did affect me directly. I didn't participate in any protesting myself, though. I didn't know when these things were happening. I felt like it was it just happened. There was one time I was down here, and I'm at work, I'm clocked in, and people just walk down the street. I'm like, whoa, when? I don't understand how these things got organized, but they did, and it was good to see. So that was cool.
Yeah, I second not really knowing immediately about the death of Breonna Taylor because, unfortunately, justice isn't really sought and demanded by enough people until the absolute worst happens.
Mm-hmm.
But it helps to start those conversations. But I remember hearing about George Floyd's death and then watching the video of his murder and just being really, really angry. I have 2 older brothers. They're adults. They're in their 30s and 40s, and they're black men who are out in the world, and I feared for them. I felt sympathy for my mom, who has feared for their lives as long as they've been on this planet. And so we at our school have a really strong community of young activists that I'm really grateful to be a part of. And I donated when I could, and I actually helped to organize a few protests and attended when I could and spread information when I could. And it felt good to try my best not to be hopeless in the situation, to do something. But I still had a feeling of wishing there was so much more I could do just because of the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, I felt that. I felt that too. I was in Columbus actually, living in Columbus when the riot started, and it was like 2 different worlds, from Columbus and Cincinnati. It was a lot more unity up there. They were a lot more aggressive though, and like you said, going back to the anger, like I felt it myself. I feel it now. I remember approaching the cop, and I asked the cop myself, like, how come y'all claim to have good cops? How come, the good cops never get in front of this stuff, when it happens? And just it's like they all just, stick together. But I'm like, y'all supposed to be good cops. Y'all supposed to protect and serve. She like, I just can't answer that. You know what I mean? Like if it was something I could do, I would do it. And I felt her. She was like Latino, maybe Puerto Rican. But man, they wrecked Columbus. They did a number on Columbus. They had choppers in the sky, and I was like, yes. But then I'm on the fence because I'm like, I don't. It just creates a cycle, a never-ending cycle. Just thinking to my girlfriend and talking to her and just wondering like what it is that we could do, like if anything. And I don't know. I feel it now though. I still feel it. The tension. Like it's still in me. It's still alive, man. I wish we could just do something right now. You know what I mean? Just to create a positive, change. And I wish we could push cops here in the city, cops in Columbus. I wish we could push them to the good ones to, want to weed the bad ones out. But I think that's where it starts, to be honest. And I feel like we gonna keep getting the same results until that happens. So that's where I'm at with it.
I definitely feel what you're saying. The anger, when I watched it, when I saw it, I had never felt that anger before, and I didn't understand it at first. And I still feel it now, and I definitely still feel the tension. And I remember we were starting back school, and I remember my brother has to get on the bus now. He has to get on the metro, but he has to walk by himself because I don't get out when he gets out. And I remember I feel scared for him every single day walking home. I just feel so scared for him, and I don't want to feel that for him. And that's a very scary thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And is it possible to kind of like narrow down like what some of the big issues were during the summer and sort of over the past year as people have looked at police reform? Are there 1 or 2 things that stick out to you as it being like the most important and the most essential for you that needs to be addressed?
Yes. One of the biggest things, because one of the biggest causes of anger was the lack of accountability for the police officers.
Absolutely.
There are people who get killed by cops, and we've come to accept that as a society. Unfortunately, there are people who their death by cops are seen as justified or like appropriate for the situation, but it is the consistent lack of accountability that really infuriated and continues to infuriate people. And one big cause of that is the unique nature of police unions and their refusal to, because if you work at a grocery store and you are like throwing eggs at people, your union's not going to say, oh, you get to keep your job. So the nature of the police union and the thin blue line mentality of, if one of us admits weakness by saying, yes, there are bad cops, we are admitting to the fact that we are a corrupt institution. And so the strength of the unions and the lack of the accountability is a massive issue.
I think Donald Trump perpetuated it a little bit. I think he could have, been vocal about holding police accountable, and instead just caused, more of a divide. And I got a friend, like my best friend. He lives in Philadelphia, and I stayed with him for maybe like 8 or 9 months, and he was always on the fence with things. Like he didn't know what side to be on, and I can understand that. But from his point of view, right? So they start rioting in Philly, shut Philly down. People looting, breaking into pharmacies, Walmarts, whatever. People who need, their medications can't get them because there are none, because those rioting took them. And so, and he has black neighbors, Latino neighbors. They all, that block is a family. And, everybody was just on the fence, like, what do, we want to be with, with the cause and with the movement, but it's like, on the flip side, you have people who need things and can't get to them, and then they like, it's just being like misled and pushed by, the negative entities, Trump, and that was the turning point for him though, when Trump wouldn't speak on behalf of the protesters, and he was a Trump advocate at first. Then he started looking at things differently, like maybe I just think it's a lot of it has to do with the disconnect, police disconnect. We have these functions around the neighborhoods and police aren't involved. I remember when I was growing up, a lot of cops knew your families, knew who your families were, knew they were involved, like, and now it's like they just got it out to be so malicious, and it's it's disheartening, man. But I just think, like she said, the cops not holding each other accountable, and our government overseers not speaking on our behalf. That's a problem.
I think portrayal in media was one thing, like because if you really were paying attention to the protests that happened, you would see that there were way more peaceful protests than there were riots. But one riot is like an equivalent to like half the protests. Like that's what you hear about. That's what's being pushed because it has such a negative, it's a negative image. And when black people protest, it can easily be painted as a riot by these white people who own their own publications and they want to push their message and their agenda. And then when white people protest, it's a whole different thing though, even if it gets violent, like what happened at the Capitol. That ended up getting violent, but you still see all these really positive things that these white people are saying about what happened, like breaking into the Capitol. That's a crime. There's no way that's not a crime.
Federal crime.
Right, like,
Exactly.
but there's no conviction. They just make it seem like, oh, it was just part of the protest. It was okay. But that's one thing that really bothered me was the way they painted these things. And then with the George Floyd, after he was murdered, then these white people wanted to pick apart his life. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what he did. The fact was that he didn't deserve to be killed on the street.
Yeah.
And he still was. That's what. And then we just got a new general manager here. He told a very interesting story about there was this art museum that was producing millions of dollars of counterfeit paintings. And apparently George Floyd got detained initially because they thought he had a counterfeit dollar bill. These counterfeit paintings were millions and millions of dollars, and no one got arrested when they got discovered. But George Floyd got, like, that whole situation started because of a counterfeit $20 bill. Was it 20? It was a dollar bill regardless.
Yeah.
And it's just like, how do you weigh that? That makes no sense. Whatever it is that y'all are using to weigh, to decide the fate of people's lives is ridiculous. It's not even fair at that point. But it was a white art museum.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's still crime too. And it's millions and millions of dollars as opposed to one single dollar bill.
Even before they ran up on the Capitol, it was a situation in Michigan. I forget which city. It was like a militia.
Mm-hmm.
A militia of white guys, all with assault rifles, walked up to like City Hall or something and demanded what they demanded. And, that's a problem. You got 20, 25 guys like out here with AK-47s and
Right, assault rifles.
ARs and like, we want this and nah. You know what I mean? Nothing happens. Brush it all the way under the rug. When the last time you heard about it? Did you
I never
hear
even
about
heard.
it at all?
No, I didn't even hear about.
You see
that.
what I'm saying? Like you said, it's just like I don't know, man. I don't know what to call it. I don't know half the words to explain it sometimes, but it's just those are problems. Those are problems.
I think what we can call it is white supremacy. We can call it the culture of white supremacy that is ingrained in America and was bolstered by Donald Trump in his for very, very long years. Like the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, it was a protest. It was an anti-Antifa protest, so do the math, it's a protest, so it has some fascist rhetoric, but these white men with their ARs and their camaraderie incited violence, and people ended up dying. And the white men were not killed by the police. I mean, they had like not severe enough charges. I'm not entirely sure what they ended up being charged with, but George Floyd, $20 maybe, murder, and that comes from our devaluation of Black lives as a culture, as a system, and that millions of dollars and 5 white lives are equal and protected. $20 outweighs the life of an innocent man because we have valued a white life more than a Black one.
She's 17. You 17, right?
Yes, sir.
It's a 17-year-old. She just, I'm saying she just called it how she saw it, like that. You know what I mean? I'm 34, and we, like my generation, I guess we have been like so numb to the problem. We don't even too much care to speak on the problem. Like, we just accept it. You know what I mean? Like, and that's like she's 17. She's 17. She just called it like that.
It's because of your generation and community leaders who have done the work to change the minds of our parents, who have even done more to, get along with the police and everything will be okay. Their parents, the generation before them was like the 60s and these OG civil rights movement. But you have to have these conversations within your community in a
Absolutely.
progression. It's not something that just breaks all at once. It's not something that an entire generation can be born with that passion and that ability to disregard negative stigma. You did the work, and then we do our work so that our kids, maybe by the time it's their world, will have.
Yeah,
Because
we,
it's all about inspiring others
Yes.
to do better.
we still have to do the work with you. In fact, like you said, like, those before us did it. Like, now it's up to us and you all. But what I'm saying, like, we've been so comfortable with this for so long, we program subliminally to not say anything about it. You know what I mean? Like except for amongst our peers, not take the conversation to people who can actually, do something with the conversation. You know what I mean? But that's amazing. That's amazing. I saw performing arts. They were on the news for initiating something with the police.
At the city hall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like this.
That kind of leads to the next question, and that is, have any of you been involved or know someone who has been involved in either the demonstrations or going to City Hall or writing letters or making phone calls or being part of awareness campaigns, even if it's on social media or something like that? Yeah, does anyone want to take that one?
I know it had to be like a year ago. Like a year ago, I remember almost everybody at our school, we went over to City Hall to protest a lot of the things that they were passing there. And I remember I was on the fence about it because I didn't really understand all of it that was going on. But I remember when I got there and when I understood what people were saying and stuff like that, I like got up on, I think it was like a ledge or something, not a ledge, but I got up on like a platform and stuff, and I really started like just going for it and protesting because I feel like a lot of times I'm conditioned to be like to be numb to it, like you were saying, but I cannot be numb to something that isn't right, and that's not okay.
Yeah.
Like you said, once you get there and you learn about things, it's so different. I spoke at a protest in Clifton in maybe a month after, no, it was about 3 weeks after the death of George Floyd. And one of the things I said was that the best thing, because a lot of people my age feel really helpless because we don't have large amounts of money that we can donate. We don't have transportation abilities to go to the big protests. We don't have people who will listen to us in our government. So what can we do? And I said the best thing that you can do is to hold the people around you accountable, to educate your peers, to educate maybe that uncle at Thanksgiving who says something weird, educate your outdated grandma, have
Absolutely.
those conversations
Definitely.
with your friends so that more people know what's going on before they get there, and then they can go,
I forgot what I was about to say. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, yeah, uncles do be getting wild at Thanksgiving. Nah.
Definitely.
We have. Is Peter Block still on the board here?
Yeah,
Or
he
did
is. Peter Block's still on
Peter
the board.
Block was like the president here, the former president of the board here. He has put in a lot of work for us. Being active with getting things resolved, breaking racial barriers. He's hosted like huge seminars, 1,000+ people, Duke Energy Center, around the country, around the world. World-renowned author, 7-time New York bestseller. He's kind of like my buddy. Peter Block has been like amazing with trying to create change, and I really I really appreciate him for that too. And my father has been in front of a lot of racially charged things that's happened here in the city. Timothy Thomas, when he got murdered, they put together a class action lawsuit. My father was also racially discriminated against, and he was like one of the leaders, that charge that happened back between like 2001. I think they didn't get the suit settled until like '04, and I had to, I was able to, benefit from watching him go through things and process them, and it's helped me in a lot of ways. I try to do it by giving back to them. I haven't really, like, outside of the cop in Columbus, I really try to keep my interactions with police brief, man. But as much as I can, I speak to the youth and just try to empower them and make them just feel good.
So we're coming up to the point where we're going to have to take a really short break, change out some batteries and whatnot,
Sure.
and also to give everyone just a break because I know this is a really heavy topic. But before we do that, we have about 2 to 3 minutes left. With everything that happened in the past year and people's activism and going to City Hall, do you all trust that your local officials and the local police have made changes or sincere efforts to bridge the divide? And I know we only have a second, so maybe we can go around this way and you guys can give me the quick version of what your thoughts are.
I would say I trust, I won't say I trust everybody. I definitely would never trust every politician of any sort. Sometimes it's hard to trust politicians in general, but it's easier for me to trust politicians who grew up in an area similar or the same area where I grew up, because they know that they know firsthand what it's actually like. Whatever changes that they're trying to make, they know what the impact will actually be, as opposed to kind of having some kind of hypothesis or something that'll sound good to get people to vote for them. It's like they actually know. And I feel horrible because I always forget his name, but he actually came to my school once, and I didn't even know who he was. I forget I wish I remembered his name. I bet he gonna remember me though. He gonna walk up on me next time I see him. Oh, so you always forget my name, huh? But he came to my school and he spoke to the entire school, and it wasn't just he wasn't pushing any if you're old enough to vote for me. He wasn't pushing anything like that. He was just talking to us about career pathways and his experience, because I believe he went to Withrow too. And seeing someone like that, it's very, very easy to trust them because they're from where I'm from, you know what I mean?
All right, I've got about a little less than 2 minutes. So do you two want to kind of weigh in really quickly?
Yeah. I don't know if I trust government at a larger scale or even the police institutions at a larger scale to make the change that we need to see. But I do trust that the outpouring of support from the community and the accountability that the community is creating for police officers, because they're like, we'll wear body cams. A lot of officers don't turn on their body cams. They say they'll be more thorough in their reporting procedures, but they don't. But the community, like just the other day, there was a traffic stop down the street. The community is the accountability. People film, people tell the story so that there will always be witnesses and always be someone to tell your side.
We've got a little under a minute now. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I don't think I will ever truly trust everyone, but I do know that I feel that people felt the impact of what happened with the protests and the activism, and I feel that in the coming years there may be more changes, but I don't think I will fully ever trust them.
Gam?
I don't feel like I should trust them. Should we? Should we? I mean, I know that they don't want it to happen. I know that much. So I know that the captain or whoever will try to make sure, this doesn't happen, but for their sake, not because it's the right thing to do.
All right. right. So I pulled some pictures off the internet because I'm not sure how familiar you all are with the 2001 unrest that happened here in Cincinnati. So my first question is, and I think it's going to be different for everyone, but do you know who Timothy Thomas is? And do you know about the 2001 unrest? And what kind of comes to mind when I say that? Maybe start over here.
I actually do not know who Timothy Thomas is, and I do not know a whole lot about the 2001 unrest. And yeah.
I do know who Timothy Thomas is. I do know a bit about the 2001 unrest. My mother and father owned a business that's actually just up the street from here. It was in the building on top of where Nicola's is, and they, during the riots, they came down to work every day, and they said we were just right there. Things were going on in Washington Park, and we didn't even know that it was going on. You know, my mom is black, my dad is white. They are an interracial couple who have faced, some scrutiny from the outside. When in times of racial tension, you see that stuff increase. They had no clue that this stuff was happening until they got home and saw it on the news. And so my dad, I was talking to my dad last night before we had this conversation, and I read an article that said the damages from the 2001 riots totaled at around $3.6 million. And my dad said, but what about, the damage this did to the businesses here in the aftermath? The media coverage of these events were blown out of proportion and unilaterally just derogatory. They were horrid depictions of black people and black activism. And so in the months following, that was kind of the beginning of the end of OTR before, you had the remodeling of Music Hall and things started happening. It turned this into this place where like white people were like, oh, don't go to Vine Street, It turned it into this place where businesses weren't being attended, businesses were being boycotted, businesses had customer bases that were just too scared to come. And so you can't say $3.6 million, oh my gosh, that's terrible what those people did, and then not count the money that you took from this community by your media coverage. I don't know.
Well, how about next time I go before you? No, I'm playing. Well, yeah, I am aware of Timothy Thomas. I do know who he is, and I know a bit about the 2001 unrest. Elementz actually initially Elementz started as a community organized cop watch, inspired by the murder of Timothy Thomas.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure when we became a youth center, but our founders, Islord, I know he was one of the people who started this cop watch, and they would just record police officer doing their job. Well, they about to be on camera.
Yeah.
So if anything happens, then hopefully we can hold them accountable.
Yeah.
I think that was the motive behind that. So go ahead, Gam. Gam's been around Elementz way longer than I have, so he might have more.
That was actually the beacon of light that came out of that unrest. The news, WCPO actually did a segment on that too. The block watch we had, Gavin Leonard, Islord Allah, Life Allah, they would have like block parties, and they would have Gavin out and Life out with these camcorders, to watch the police, because I guess too what was happening, like after that happened, there would be parties outside and cops would just come and be aggressive about breaking it up. So it didn't really stop there until they started doing that, and from that they put Chris Smitherman with he's a former city council member. They put Chris Smitherman with Peter Block and Tom Kent. They created this board, and they built this center in 2005, and I actually know Timothy Thomas's big brother. I didn't know Timothy, but his big brother, Terry, he's a great guy, man. And I mean, he wears it proudly, and he will not let it be forgotten. What happened to his brother, and it's, you know, it's just, it's sad that somebody can, you know, be running like, you know, in retreat, full retreat, and have to lose, you know, their life. You know what I mean? But it did, and two, it did usher in like the change that started coming. It came about maybe about 2004, 2005 when they started trying to rebuild stuff here. Yeah, man, I remember it. I remember it. They initially, it was like everybody was running all over the place, kind of, you know, vandalizing stuff. But then they got stronger, and, you know, they had leaders and activists there who, you know, set a mission in motion and plan, so that, you know, we could have, you know, something constructive could be done instead of, you know, damaging things. But yeah, I'm real familiar with this, man. It brings back a whole bunch of memories. It's shocking that we still got to go through it, but I believe it's a silver lining somewhere. So it's up to us to find it, though, for sure. Can't rely on anybody else to do the work for us.
All right. So when I walked in, I didn't know a lot about Elementz, so I really appreciate you telling me a little bit about the background of it, and that there's actually a mural with Timothy Thomas on the other side of this wall that's behind us. And so just to kind of go over what happened, in 2001, or in the 5 years before 2001, there'd been about over a dozen black men who were killed by the police. But then there were no white men during that same time frame who were killed by police. So it was just the black men. And right before Timothy Thomas was killed, I think that November, Roger Owensby Jr., I put his picture here since we're going to be talking about him. He was also killed by police. He was died after being put in a chokehold. Nobody ever went to prison for that. And that was, I believe, in November. And then I believe it was that April was when Timothy Thomas was wanted for several nonviolent misdemeanors. Most of them were traffic citations. And he was running from police, according to what officially happened. And when he turned a corner, he was shot by a police officer who said that he thought that Timothy was reaching for a gun when he was really just pulling up his pants. So Timothy Thomas was unarmed. So you're right when you say there was a really big impact to this area of Cincinnati, because there were billions of dollars in damage to businesses. I'm sorry, millions of dollars of damages to businesses and to some city buildings. And there was also a boycott on the downtown businesses that had at least a $10 million impact on people who were shopping downtown. And when this happened, it was the largest civil unrest in the country since the LA riots. Mm-hmm. So it was a really big deal. It lasted about 4 nights. And there were some changes that came out of that locally. But I'm curious, just as people still in high school, it seems like you have a personal connection almost to the unrest. But are a lot of people your age, are they familiar with Timothy Thomas and the unrest and what happened here in Cincinnati?
I actually didn't know the story of Timothy Thomas until I was probably about 14, because that was when my parents and I started coming down here, and they were telling me about their office and all the time that they lived down here, and so that story kind of came up. But the most recent kind of Cincinnati, because since from 2001 to present day, I think there have only been around 15 people killed by police in Cincinnati and the 8 counties surrounding Cincinnati. But there's one, and it's the murder of Samuel DuBose by Ray Tenzing at the University of Cincinnati, and that was that was the oldest I was being aware of this police violence before, of course, the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor in this past summer. And then I was a little younger, so I was really just confused why the police, who were supposed to be like, if you're in trouble, go to the police. If you're ever lost or somewhere, just go, like, if there's a cop, he can help you. Why I then watched a video of a man who put his hand on the outside of a car door and then grabbed a man by the collar and shot him in the head at point blank range. So it wasn't adding up. And so it was a lot of confusion. It's just a lot of confusion that then turned into anger and passion as I got older.
I know for myself, I did not know a lot about what happened in 2001 or Timothy Thomas. I know that when I'm around my family members, I have heard them talk about things in the past that have happened in 2001. And a lot of the things that you guys are saying are actually kind of starting to make sense, and they're starting to connect. But I didn't know a whole lot about it, and I know my friends don't know a whole lot about it either.
Yeah, we they had us on curfew those 4 nights. We had to be in at like 7 or 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
I got lucky and slid through. My mom had just she had just bought a condo in Fairfield, and I was on the first thing smoking in Fairfield. But I don't know, man. It's just been this dark cloud here since that. And the cop that shot Timothy Thomas was he got another job in Evendale working for the academy. So I'm like, when does it stop? And Owensby, correct me if I'm wrong, he wasn't even from Cincinnati. He was from like I want to say Chicago. Everything in me wants to say Chicago. He was not from Cincinnati though. And so I can't visit here now without having to, you know what I mean? Then for me, I got 2 little boys, and my son, he's real inquisitive. My 9-year-old, so he's like, Daddy, aren't the police supposed to help us? How do I respond to him? Like, do I give him BS, or do I cut it straight with him, like, and fill him in? How, you know what I mean? Like, one side of me wants to tell him, the other side is like, I want him to still be a kid. It's just I appreciate them so much for the work they're doing at Performing Arts, man. That's big. It's big, and I wish we would have been more vocal when we were younger, so it would have already been in motion. But y'all have it now, and kudos. Just keep doing the work. Stay together. Make sure you stay together while you do the work. Yeah, man, I remember the 4 nights. I remember those 4 nights. I was speaking to friends from Fairfield, like, we can't come outside. They got us, we under martial law right now.
Yeah, my dad's 30th birthday party was supposed to be that weekend. We had family that was going to come into town, and the curfews prevented, like, it closed the venue, and the media coverage of the protests kept some of my family members maybe from wanting to come in and then come downtown, and so it was canceled. We still actually have, my dad showed me last night, we have the 30th birthday banners in the basement from that party that never happened.
Yeah, it's for real. Once y'all had the knowledge, it's kind of up to, you all to get it to your peers. You know what I mean? Like, that's how history has been passed down through through the conversation to be had, and don't have the conversation to be angry. Have the conversation to figure out, to educate and figure out resolution.
We're lucky enough to have unprecedented access to communication through social media, through Instagram, through TikTok, through Snapchat. And one of the things I noticed most recently, and Amir, I don't know if you can attest to this as well, is during quarantine, especially, people had a lot of time to think, and kids who maybe are super busy were watching the news when they weren't before. People who were preoccupied with their issues, or maybe some more superficial young people issues, were paying attention to the world around them for the first time, and then also had this channel of communication. So there has been this brilliant dissemination of information through not only about events that don't get the coverage that they need because of the biases of the media. Like, I didn't hear about the murder of 6 Asian women in Georgia until I saw it on social media. But we are able to educate our peers and get more of that information ourselves without, and sometimes our parents do want to protect us because they want to keep us young, and we get to a certain age where we start seeking our own information, and now we have more channels to seek information coming from our peers and coming from, our own communities.
Yes, I can definitely attest to that. Definitely over the summer, I definitely started watching a lot more news all the time. And I remember when I was over at my grandma's house, we were watching, I believe it was either like CNN, CBS, something like that. And they were talking about the Minnesota riots. And I wanted to go back to what you said about the betrayal in the media. That was just crazy, because the thing is that the whole thing started was because there was Trump supporters who were rallying for his campaign for him to be president, and they got into it with the Black Lives Matter people when they were just sitting down and they were being peaceful, but the news turned it around to seem like the Black Lives Matter people was actually rioting and throwing things when it wasn't them. They were being peaceful and they were sitting down when Trump supporters were literally throwing things at their head for supporting something that's actually important. And I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that. And also, right after that, another story was that a CNN reporter who was actually reporting on something in the area, I can't remember it now, but anyway, the CNN reporter got arrested by the police because he was filming them doing things that they weren't supposed to do. Police.
I saw that. I know what you're talking about.
Yes.
Like, he got arrested on camera. While he was live on air. Yeah, yes. I saw that. Yeah, that was crazy. That was definitely crazy.
And I was like, why? Why would you do that? Like, the thought process, I just don't understand.
Yeah. It definitely took us quarantining. I feel like it took us, having to go through the precautions of the pandemic for our eyes to be open to what's going on and wanting to do something, be active and do something about it. I think it's a double-edged sword with COVID. It helped us, but you still had those who died and got sick health-wise. But I feel like it definitely helped us get to know each other too. We had to sit in houses, and you think you know a person, and you think you know a person till you can't do nothing, and you gotta just basically sit in the house and figure it out, man.
I think definitely among me and my peers, it sparked our creativity.
Yeah.
Because we go to a performing arts school, and we come in the door and we are just spurred with creativity, but we couldn't experience that because we were at home. And so in my drama ensemble class, we were trying to think of ways to still promote theater and still promote the arts while also still being active in the community. So we decided to do this film called Twilight. It's about the LA 92 riots, and to research it, we had to actually watch a documentary about the LA 92 riots and Rodney King. And I mean, I knew about Rodney King, and I kind of had to research it for various other projects in the past. But I remember when we came in the next day, on our Google Meet and stuff, and we had to actually talk about it. My white friends were so astonished by what they saw, and I was too, of course, but not as intense of what they saw. And we were all saying the same thing, that nothing has changed since Rodney King till now. And I was like, that is crazy.
I have a question about that. So when your white friends are, so shocked by something like Rodney King, and you are a black man and that's something that you are that you see and hear about in the community around you. How does that make you feel about the kind of reality that you all are living in?
I don't even know what to feel. I mean, when I heard that, when they were so like astonished by it, like the things that they said, like of course they were totally valid and they made sense. It was like they opened an entirely new world when I was like, it was already here. And it was just, it just didn't make sense to me, because the thing is, it's like, I understand seeing some of the things. I mean, it shocked me because I wasn't there. I didn't know everything that went on. I knew most things, but to be that shocked was just, it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Police brutality has always been a conversation within the Black community. You know, you get to a certain age and your mom is like, okay, you know, if you ever are if a police officer is ever being aggressive with you, you know, hold your hands in clear view and be like, yes, officer. Yeah. If you're at a traffic stop, be like, ask if you can reach for your license and registration, and then do so like clearly and be very slow, so that if they don't have an excuse to be violent with you. And that's just kind of something that we're taught as a reality of the world, something that we learn to accept and something that we learn to cope with. And so it did baffle me that so many of my white friends, and even some of my like Black friends and minority friends, either they never had those conversations or they were just completely unaware, both because of media portrayal and just generational unawareness, you know? And so with the most recent events and with the national vocalization and the kind of inability to ignore the protests, because when you see police brutality, oftentimes you have like localized protests, like everybody in that community is very upset and is rioting, but the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor sparked such a national outrage that so many people had to get educated on this, because when they said things that were out of pocket, when they said things that were probably insensitive, they would get told off. You know, their peers would hold them accountable. And so people were forced to go through this process of learning the reality of being Black in specifically America, but in, you know, the world. And while it always has been this thing that is like an awakening for some people, this year it happened for everybody at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact. My white friends, a lot of them are from like Fairfield. They shocked me like years ago though. It was like they were ahead of their time, like ahead of the curve with this. Like it used to be like different fights in Fairfield, and the cops would come, you know, break the party up, but they would be aggressive. And I got like white friends, white girls that are like, you know, back, you know, basically headbutting with the cops, like, you don't gotta be like that, rah. And like, you know, like, and then they looking at the girls like we can't even do them like that, so they kind of like just fall back, they kind of chill, you know what I mean? I don't know, it's totally different for me. I got like maybe one, well, he's a former friend, because he just, I don't know, somewhere in his head, he just, you know, feels like cops can do no wrong. It doesn't matter. Like the whatever case scenario doesn't matter to him. But he's like the only one, and he moved further out to like past Hamilton. I can't think of where he moved to, but he used to be with us. But you know, people like that, they weed themselves out. But I've been blessed to have like a good core group of friends, like when it comes to that, and it's like they were already aware and already like had already picked which side they wanted to be on, you know, prior to 2001 or you know, prior to Ray Tenzing. They already, and to me it seemed like they you know were a little more passionate than some of my, you know, Black friends that's numb and used to it. You know what I mean?
Can I ask you, so having a friend who to use your words, feels like there's not, that the police can't really do wrong and that they're justified when they do some of these things. You mentioned having your kids and not knowing how to talk to them about interacting with police, and you mentioned your own experience. So when you kind of have this entirely different lived experience than this person who was your friend, I mean, how does that make you feel? What do you think about something like that, and how do you sort of reconcile that thought process is it's out there?
I mean, first thought, like, initially, like, it honestly, like, I feel like I want to break something. Not him per se, but, like, how can you be so blind and naive to what you see on the camera? But my grandmother has, you know, I always had us, like, grounded in church, and she's, like, you know, half Native American. So she's high on spirituality, and in my you know, in these later years, I'm like more accepting of people and their points of views, and I can't control how another person feels. So I just go back to basic training, my upbringing. We have no control over what a human thinks or feels. They are entitled to how they feel. What can you do about it? You're gonna make them. You're gonna beat it into them. That don't work. That intensifies the hate, the divide. I don't. You know, all I can do is I had the conversation with him, like, and he was remiss, and, you know, felt how he felt. I was mad. Okay, let me cut the conversation short because we're getting nowhere. It's like beating a dead horse in the head. So, or however the saying goes.
I ain't never heard the head part. I was in the head, huh?
But I don't know, man. I just, you know, I come to accept what I cannot change, and you know, that's.
I'm learning that more and more today.
Yeah, like
accepting the things you cannot change.
You gotta live by it. You some things you don't have control over. You can do the work like, you know, you all are doing. Some people will come to, you know, appreciate, you know, from the other side. Some people will come to appreciate and accept it like, hey, we should change. Some people won't. It's just the way things are.
I think the interesting thing about that mindset, accepting what you can't change, is some people feel like they can't change certain things that they can change. But since they feel like they can't, they make no effort to change it. I'm not saying you like that, but there's that mindset. Because I know people like OGs in the hood who feel like, you know, they can't change certain things in their neighborhood, so they make no attempt.
Yeah.
And I feel like what started that was, you know, the times they grew up in, they don't have, you know, access to all the information that we have access to. And your generation didn't either, you know. There wasn't all these apps and phones and stuff, yeah. And the generation like that, like the OG, he like at least 50, you know, it's hard for them to learn how to use all the stuff too. Mm-hmm. And they just accept that. Since it's hard for them to learn, they don't feel like learning. They feel like they can't learn it effectively, so they just don't do it. And then they got all their past experiences with their whole lives, and they just, you know, work off of what they know to be true so far with them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people that are trying to program, you know, the younger generations like that.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke on your children. You talked about your brother. You know, I have siblings. We are all Black people with Black family and loved ones that we hold dear and unfortunately have to fear for because of, you know, police violence. And while there is the work that's being done right now that we have to do for those former friends that can't change, and it's so ingrained in them that they can't change, and there are those things that we accept that we're like, okay, we can't change it. I'm hoping that by the time, because one day I hope to have a child, that child will be a person of color. You know, I want it to be a world in which we no longer feel like that there's no legitimate route to go through seeking that justice, because right now all we have are these community activism moments, these outbursts of the anger that we have as a community have felt for ever, since we've been Americans, this anger and this weight that has been placed on us. And so I'm hoping that at least we'll have ways, because these things aren't going to disappear overnight. They're not going to disappear within the next 40 years probably, but we will at least get to the point where we can have ways to seek that justice legitimately.
Well, that actually brings me to like the last bit, and I know we're going to go over a little bit. Are we okay with the video? Okay, great. So kind of this last bit that I wanted to get to is, you know, we talked about what happened this summer, what's happened over the past year, and we talked about 2001. You know, we're trying to keep this local, we're trying to keep this to Cincinnati. And I'm just curious, when you hear about sort of this cycle of there was this unrest in 2001, there's this unrest in 2020 with people changing and people wanting change. And, you know, you talked about Rodney King in the early 90s. When you see these cycles of unrest, and a lot of times it's the exact same kind of issue, do you all think that with everything people do, that we're ever going to get to a head where where you all feel, as Black people, people of color, that we're at a more just society? Do you think we're going to get there, or are we kind of stuck in this cycle?
I think we can get there for sure. At the end of the day, there's always going to be hate, though. I think, you know, because these people who have that hate, or just, you know, white supremacists, people who think they're better just because they're white, if they're qualified for a job, you know what I mean? You can't say that they're not qualified just because they're racist. They're probably not fit for said job. But on paper, if they meet the qualifications, then they meet the qualifications. And I feel like if the person who determines whether or not they meet the qualifications is like them, the person who's higher up is like them, then it'll stay a cycle. But if we can replace that person, then, you know, just changing the people who have the power to make, you know, judgment calls like that, then I think we can get somewhere. And I think that starts with education and love. You can't be out here promoting hate.
No.
And community engagement. You really need to have the community, you know, unified and understanding the importance and significance of every issue that you got to vote on, using your, you know, civic engagement just in general. I think as long as we're doing that, then there's definitely hope. Now, I'm not going to say that we're going to be perfect, because there's no such thing as perfect. But I think definitely we can get it better than, it's already better than it was in the past. But we can definitely get it better than it is now.
I believe we are already on our way. I hate to feel like I'm hoping, but the kids are showing us the way. I think the problem has been with the cycle. Nobody is speaking on this until it happens. You know what I mean? Like they have went out of their way to you know, start creating this change and speaking on this stuff before the next shooting happens. I think that factors in like in a major way, and for real, really, I think that's the only way. I think that's the only way we can do it, is if, you know, I think that creates another cycle. We got this cycle with this now. You know what I mean? We got people connecting, you know, for this cause, and it hasn't happened. Well, I won't say it hasn't happened, but they're doing it without
Right, being
somebody
told
getting
to.
shot. You know what I mean?
Oh,
without,
okay, never
without-
mind.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, they already front line before
Yeah.
before it's even
Mhm.
before the next situation happened. And I think that's how you I think that's how you create love and create positive energy and the positive cycles come together before this happens. Because once it happens, you got all these people rallying. Now you got people inside looking like they only saying something now because it happened. Where was they at before the situation occurred?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to respond to what you were saying. My parents always tell me, don't be about it when I say something or when somebody else say something. Be about it because you need to be about it.
Yeah.
But also, I do think one day, I hope I do, that one day we can get to not a perfect society, but a harmonious one, harmony, life. I do think that we can get there only if people stop discriminating against things they cannot control in people that we can't control.
Yeah. As far as the cycle goes, I think the conversation about the fact that it is a cycle is happening more now, which is really beneficial. Because when the protests began, and I was talking to my mom, and I was like, I need to do something. I feel like I need to do something. And I was talking about going to protests and getting out there, no matter what risk it could pose to me. I wanted to do something. And she, in her initial reaction of all this anger and this sadness, this grief, and she was angry with me only temporarily, because she was like, what are you going to do? What is going to be different that you do? We had riots in 94. We had riots in 2001. There are protests probably like every second month when someone gets killed by a police officer. There were protests in 2015. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I think what's happening right now with how present this has been in the public conscious and how nobody has been able to ignore it, and so everyone is being forced to have this conversation and educate themselves, and people are learning about those riots that happened before they were born, and people not only within the American community but in the global community are looking in on this and commenting point blank on the awful things that they see. And so not only are we having a conversation about how we can, in the temporary, improve the cycle, we're having a conversation on how we can break it. This is not just an issue of, oh, cops are bad. This isn't talking necessarily just about the police. This is talking about the culture that creates the police. This is talking about, because the first police union was a runaway slave catching union. We need to look at the history and why these institutions are the way that they are, so that we can break the cycle going forward, and then we can see change.
Start changing the outdated things.
That was
Drops mic and leaves.
Yeah. So before we wrap it up, was there anything that you all want to tell me about? Something I didn't ask you about? Anything you want to add as we sort of come to an end here?
I think one thing I do want to add though is that and we're literally in the hood right now, like we in the cut, and that means like we're like in the nick of there's shootings all the time around here, and I think people are so and they have their own little bubbles in their own communities. Like this is one of the neighborhoods I grew up in. I grew up down here and in Avondale, and at one point in time Avondale was, and it still is, they call it Afghanistan because all the killings and all the violence in Avondale. And down here is bad too, and it's just sometimes it's really hard for me to see the communities that I was brought up in exhibiting the unity that they would need, or that we would need, to bring about a change in said communities. But then, places like Elementz really, really helped me to be optimistic, especially when I figured out how Elementz started. I didn't even know until I think I started working here is when I figured out. And it's crazy to see that a lot of people recognize, like in this immediate area, recognize Elementz as just a recording studio. But it's a respected place in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
Respect is really important in neighborhoods like this. It's definitely a respected place because we help people. We not just help people record their music, we're helping them use their voices. And so they really respect that and they appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that they don't even know how Elementz started. They don't know that like 3 people, because what happened to Timothy Thomas, created this that is for them, and they don't even know that. And I think that it's a beautiful thing, but I wish that they would know it as well. And we've told them before, but it doesn't really, the value of it isn't there for them. But they just appreciate that they can record here, that they can use their voices. But because of, topics like what we discussed throughout this conversation, they have this. Because of that, that's just one thing that I wanted to say that I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah,
It don't matter what you. No, I'm playing.
For real, to kind of piggyback off of what he was saying about Elementz in the environment that surrounds. I mean, a couple kids may fight rarely. It's rare. It's really rare, honestly. But like nobody is like harmed in front of the building. No drugs get sold in front of the building. It's and whether they know, how it started or not, like I think like it should be more places like Elementz, like throughout other cities. If they can implement it the way Gavin Life and Islord did, if they can implement it that way, I think places like these, create a big difference. You got people from, different ethnicities here in this building, and from different walks of life and everything, and it's just like, it's like we're all like family, and I think you need, or we need, more establishments like these. Like it's one thing to have an arts contemporary center, right? People love art and painting, but it's another thing to like, bring those people in who are painting for a better, bigger cause. It's a bigger picture out here. You know what I mean? It's just about loving thy neighbor. You know what I mean? Like just appreciate that person and knowing like the same way you have gone through your trials and tribulations, so has this woman and so has that man. So is that, you know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I would like to leave you all with just as mindful as you already seem like y'all have, blown me away. Just continue being mindful and continue to take initiative.
Yeah. To piggyback off of what you said, just because I read as much as I can, I look at statistics, I look at opinions from both ends of the spectrum, I try to educate myself as much as I can, but just because you may feel like you know a lot, education is not a finite thing. It's something that is a growth experience. It's something that you continue to do throughout your whole life. So never feel like maybe because you don't know a lot of information, don't feel like you can't seek it. And if you already do know a lot of information, don't feel like you can't know more. That's really important.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what everyone has said in the room, and I just want to be the change that I want to see.
Do you think, this is just a question, being educated, on all the issues and matters, do you think it's important to also be street smart in the sense to like know what's going on in your community?
Yeah.
Do you think that balance is important? Because I know a lot of people who are, just because of where I grew up at, I know a lot of people who are street smart.
Yes.
And a lot of people here at Elementz, or when I was a member here, learning how to use my own voice with, the art of rap and just making music, most of the people who were around me that were adults that were, making impressions on me were street smart. They were educated, but they were more street smart than anything because they grew up right here in the streets. And, not the best education school-wise, public schools don't have the best education, and just because of that, they're more street smart, but they know the changes they want to make, but they don't have the education to do it. But they know we need this, we need that. They don't know how to go about getting set, whatever that is that they need. And I just, from what you were telling me, and I also have one more thing I wanted to say, because I had to leave the room for a phone call about white friends, the question you had about white friends. But yeah, street smart and being educated, I think that balance is really important, but you don't see that often, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
But a question you had about white friends, I wanted to say that the white friends I have that I didn't meet down here, I met at a school. I got sent to an audio production school where I went there, and in Chillicothe, Ohio, of all places. And the white people up there, we became friends. They were really cool, but it's like seeing something through a screen and then seeing it in person. It's like it's hard to believe the reality of the situation, and that's what I really experienced up there. Because I went up there and, I guess I ended up playing basketball with white kids, and they were talking to me like I was LeBron James when I was playing. I was like, yo, I'm not, bro. But I guess they've never had that experience of playing with like a black person and seeing LeBron James dunking on people and stuff like that. It's kind of like a stereotype, but I know they didn't mean it in any offensive way, but I was definitely more athletic than them, and I think they chalked that up to me being a black man. And it was a whole, like me being up there where there was only three people of color in that whole school. There was only 3 people of color, and I was one of them. It was like I was bringing something to them that they kind of like heard stories about, or like a kind of like a myth. And I feel like that's why, when you were talking about like your friends were so shocked, I feel like it kind of goes back to that, because this isn't, they don't see this like firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't even see it secondhand sometimes. They hear about it, or the news, or their parents telling them, or something like that. But we're exposed to it every day, and so it's reality for us. But it's kind of like not reality to them because they're not experiencing that every day.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, because when there's only 3 people, including me, of color in my drama ensemble class. So me, LaShira, and Maya, we already knew about the riots and stuff like that. And it was like, in my teacher is white, so like it was basically all of the class plus the teacher were like, I mean, when we came on the call, it was very silent because we had like just watched it, and they was like, wow. And they couldn't even like speak for a second.
What you said about street smarts, it incorporates the one thing that I wanted to mention that we didn't talk about during the conversation. And mixing street smarts with book smarts and educating yourself about your community, you have an understanding of your community from when you're born, and it grows and it changes throughout your life. And there's an understanding of a community that can only be comprehended by people inside of it. And as these things continue to happen and we continue to grow the outrage, we're able to connect more of those book smart people with those street smart people to create the discourse that is needed. And not only are we becoming more educated within our communities, we are recognizing the specific and unique experiences of other communities in ways that are helping us to be better advocates for each other. Like, I know there was a lot of like Latinas for Black Lives Matter, and there was a lot of BLM for anti-immigrant, against anti-immigrant sentiment. And in this most recent wave of anti-Asian violence, there has been an education of everyone's community of that struggle, just as we have been able this past summer to educate more people of our struggle. And so we're connecting our street smart with our book smart with those from every other community, and it's helping us to increase the conversation greatly.
Start bridging those gaps.
Right, right.
That girl is going places.
For sure.
Like Elements. No, I'm playing.
Elements.
That girl is going
All right,
places.
folks. Well, I hate to be the one to say it, but I think we're at the end here, and I just want to take a second to say thank you for being so candid and intimate and personal about your experiences and your thoughts on these really big and important issues. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
No
Thank you.
Thank you
problem.
for having us.
Big facts. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
Not the TED Talk.
Group
You're
photo?
supposed to put these on the thing?